Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you all. We'll wait a second here for people to come in. Russ is letting people in.
Actually, what I'm doing right now is pulling up my timer so I can keep you honest.
Oh, okay, good. I need that.
I don't have anybody else in the waiting room, so I can share my screen and you can take it away.
Sounds good.
Ignore the date.
All right.
Please.
Need to update the date. Good to see everybody. All right, so we'll, as we've done the past couple, or as we've done since we've started these, really, we'll start with some updates. I'll give some updates. Russ has a couple of updates to give as well, just because he has more of the detail. We'll be better at explaining them than I will be. We have a quick breakout room for folks on the call to talk a little bit amongst yourselves. It's been an opportunity when we've done them for people to meet each other and have a quick conversation, and then to be able to give us a little feedback on something or another. Today it's about actually these lunches and this kind of part of the engagement work. And then we'll just open it up for questions and answers, and that'll be that. So the purpose of Lunch with Tom is just another opportunity for me and for our district to engage with the broader BSD community, with staff, parents, members of the public. We have everyone represented today, I believe, in terms of the staff and parents and school board members and members of the public who are invested in our success. And so that's really the idea, is just to provide an open forum for updates and conversation. It's a way for us to communicate those updates, to have open conversations about BSD-wide issues. I would just ask that if there are specific questions about yourself or about your child, that you reach out directly to me, and I'm happy to have that conversation with you. I just think it's most appropriate that we do those specific conversations in private as opposed to at this forum. And then lastly, it's to build relationships and community. So it's just an opportunity for us to see each other and get to know each other more and build community. So we'll start with updates, and we've actually gone through each of these, and so we didn't have a goal, but what we've been we don't have a goal that we're highlighting today, because we've gone through each of the 6 goals, one goal per week, to discuss kind of where we are and what we're looking at and where we are in terms of our progress toward these goals. We have 6 goals that we developed this summer. These are them if you're looking at the page on your left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side is the metric. They're equity and based goals, really attempting to address opportunity gaps, and they were developed by our cabinet, which is our directors and executive directors and our principals. It's a group of about 28 people, and we brought them to the school board, and the school board reviewed them and gave us some feedback, and then we finalized, and we've been keeping on top of these goals throughout the course of the year. They're really a baseline of in many cases of sort of understanding where we are, and also they represent many of the strategies and goals that the district has been focusing on over time. And so the idea with these was to really have measurable goals for the year, and to keep us focused on specific outcomes, and also to give us the practice of having measurable goals that we look at throughout the year and we stay focused on. And as we head into the development of a new strategic plan, which we're just starting now, and plan to co-construct that with the community. And so these goals will shift next year. I imagine there will be some crossover and similarity, but we'll develop a new plan that we we'll set goals too, as similar to what you're seeing here.
And Tom, I may have seen someone try to snap a photo of the goals real quick. And so what I can do for everybody is just drop them into the chat for you too. They're on our website, but I'll put the link right in there so that you don't have to look at them on your phone for the next couple of weeks.
Great, thank you, Russ. And then sort of major updates. There's a lot going on. I actually told my team, I told Russ and a couple of other people last week that there is too much going on right now in the district, and we are likely to make a few mistakes, which is often what happens when there's too much going on. And so for us to really just kind of be watching out for each other and be there to support each other. And I'm proud of my team and the way we've been able to do that. But also I just wanted to put that out there because I know that there are just things that have not been as tight as I would like them to be the past couple of weeks. And so that's my disclaimer to get started. But we're all, what's that?
Bear with us.
Bear with us, but hold us accountable and have high expectations for us too. So BHS BTC next step. So we had a really big board meeting last week, and at that meeting, I recommended that we move forward with that we end the project of the re-envisioning project, and that we start looking for start planning for a new building for BHS and BTC. The school board agreed with that recommendation. We had a lot of support for that recommendation through our own team and through the consultants that we work with, where it just became clear that we were not going to be able to deliver on the original intent of the project, and that we may end up doing a whole bunch of work and then come back into a building that was no longer, that still wasn't, usable. And so we couldn't take that risk. And so what this does is it provides us a real opportunity. And it also provides a certain level of stress for the community that is really, that I want to just acknowledge, and it's tangible, and I know it's there. And I feel it personally, while I also feel optimistic about the future and the opportunities here. So what we're going to do now is we're really going to work quickly. These types of projects take a long time, and so we're a 4-year project to get to a new building is a really aggressive timeline. And so we have a 3.5-year lease at downtown Macy's, and we can extend that lease a bit, but we also want to be in a school not too long after that 3.5-year lease is up. So the first step is to do a site assessment. And so what we are starting to do now, we've started, the wheels are turning, and part of what ending the project allowed us to do was to redirect all of our resources away from sort of continuing with a project that we weren't sure about or that we had serious doubts about, and put them toward a project of building a new building. So we're going to do a site assessment, and that will give us a sense of those sites that are available and ready to build on, or viable spaces for us to have a high school. And there are a number of sites around town. There are, including the current Burlington High School site and Burlington Technical Center site on Institute Road. That site is still a viable site for a high school. There has been some talk about the soil. So the PCBs have gone into the soil, but they haven't gone deep into the soil. So, and so there is no, what they call plume or anything that's sort of underneath the ground that may shift around to other sites on that site. It's really sort of on the surface at this point. And so we are able to utilize that site. There are some other sites. There are some ideas for downtown. We're really enjoying the opportunity of being downtown and continuing to see the great opportunities for deep learning and connection to the community in being downtown. And so there are a couple of sites downtown that could be viable. And so we'll be looking at all of those options. So likely what will happen is we'll get to a set of 5 to 10 sites and then narrow those down to 2 to 3 sites. And then we do a site phase 2 of a site assessment where we bring in civil engineers and architects and really see of those last couple sites that are truly the most viable, what really is viable, and then make a decision there. And this is the construction takes 2 years. It takes 2 to 3 years. So I'm saying we have an aggressive timeline. It takes 2 years. This is the part of the work, the site assessment work, the drawings, the development of the bond, all the work that has to go into getting to the point where you can build is what can also take a lot of time. And so what we're going to need to do is be really aggressive in the beginning of this process and really utilize the work that we've done up to this point to understand what sites are available. We already have some drawings. We've already done some site assessment. We've already done some engagement around what sites the community would want. So we'll still do that work, but we're going to really do that quickly so that we don't push back our timelines and push out beyond the 4 years that it could take if we do a really aggressive project. So that's where we are. We can talk more about that. I'm sure that's on people's minds, and we can talk more about that when we get to the Q&A section, and I have more information to it on that. The second one is the Edmonds principal search, Edmonds middle school principal search. So James, who is on the call, unfortunately is leaving us to move to the other side of the country. We support James in that decision and are grateful for the work that he's done. And James has been an amazing leader for us at Edmonds. I'm very sad to see him go, and I also wish him the best in his new endeavor. And so we have posted a principal vacancy for Edmonds Middle School. You may have heard that I was considering an idea of bringing those 2 schools together into one campus and having one campus principal. That I know is something that has been done before, and people generally have told me that it was not successful for multiple different reasons, not because of any individual people, but just because of the design. I do believe we could do it differently and have success. I feel pretty strongly about that. I also heard the feedback of staff on Friday, the leadership team I met with at both schools, and they said that they really did not think that this was a good idea and one that they supported at this point. And so I decided not to continue to move forward with that. So we are posting the Edmonds middle school principal position, and we'll be hiring for that position as soon as possible. We have a webinar tonight supporting our LGBTQ plus students and community as a part of our equity webinar series, our equity conversation series. Those have been really great ways for us to come together as a community and talk about equity and inclusion and the things that we really care deeply about. And so that is tonight, and I'd encourage you all to attend. I'll be balancing that with my daughter's track meet. There's a first middle school track meet out in South Burlington, so I'm trying to do both of those tonight. The equity report came out also last week at the school board meeting. It's available online. It's a really strong report that shows shows the work we have. It really this year. Our director of the Office of Equity, Director Sparks, led in the development of this report, and he aligned the report to the goals, to our 6 goals, and really highlighted the disparities that we see in our schools and the work that and gave some recommendations for the work that we need to do moving forward. So that he's actually going to come to our next lunch meeting, I believe. Is that right, Russ? And so he'll be able to talk more about that, but it's online and up and available here. Russ, can you talk about annual student update and travel plans?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. Many of you probably just before this meeting started got an email and possibly a text message from us. We are on top of it this year, getting the annual student update out before the end of the year for probably the first time that I can remember. We usually kind of do this in August, but we have bumped it up so that we can have all of our information ready to go for the start of the year as we're planning to bring everybody back full in person. So please complete your annual student update in PowerSchool by next Friday, or Victor on the call will be sending me tons of emails asking me to send you tons of emails. So help me out and please complete the annual student update. Travel plans for schools. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to look through this. We are working with the city as well as a couple of other partners, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. Some of you know that some of our schools have what we call safe routes to schools. And these are ways that we can help you get to school that's not necessarily using a car, but what is the safest way for you to travel using alternative means, whether that be walking, busing, biking. So we're trying to do that for all of our schools, all of our campuses now. We are focused on the 52 Institute Road campus right now, hoping, with the possibility that that might be a location in the future. We had to sort of pick one because at the time we got the grant to do this work, that was the site. So just would ask that you go to the website, tell us how you travel to schools. How can we make it better for you? There's both a survey or there's an actual audit tool that you can do. It's pretty quick and easy to use. And I kind of look at it as like see, click, fix. I can't promise that things are going to be fixed, but we're working with the city specifically to create long-term plans, whether that's sidewalk fixes, that's road openings, road closures, one-way streets. Any of that stuff is on the table, is what our city partners have told us. But we just really need to get a robust data set. That's it for me.
All right. And then the last couple of things before we go into a breakout and then open up for Q&A, we are in the midst of recovery planning. So as I mentioned earlier, where we have sort of too many things going at one time, recovery planning is one of those. This planning is a part of the Federal American Rescue Plan Act that was recently passed to support schools and districts across the country to address any of the issues that they're experiencing, that their communities are experiencing as a result of being out of school or living or being in school during the pandemic. And we are currently developing plans for the summertime. The planning timeline is really short because we were in the midst of developing, in the midst of sort of thinking about how to come back in person more, closing out the year, and figuring out how to make sure that we are responsible stewards of additional funding that is coming to us to support these efforts. And the efforts are, as the state's interpretation of the American Rescue Plan funding, is that we will focus on academic support, social and emotional and health and well-being and mental health, and engagement. There's also the opportunity to utilize some recovery funds for facilities upgrades. And so we're building those plans. Those plans are due to the Agency of Education, and we have a task force that has been working on those. And then the Agency of Education is charged with reviewing and approving plans, and then we begin to implement. I think the important thing to remember with these recovery funds is that they're 3 years. They last for 3 years, and that the plan, we have to put together a solid plan, and we know that we may want to adjust the plan over time. It will the process allows for amendments and for adjustments over time, which I think is really important because we haven't had enough time to develop a plan in a way that I think we've been able to engage the community enough. And that's something that if you look at sort of the national news on this, everyone's in the same position because the timelines are federal timelines. And so this has been both a really great opportunity and something that we're really looking forward to, and a challenge that we know we need to think about more long-term. And so it's connected to this last point here, which is about the strategic plan. So we're working with we're going to be working, we've just started working with a group called the Center for Innovative Education. And that is, we're working with two people. One was the deputy commissioner in New Hampshire when they did a bunch of innovative work around assessment. And the other his name is Paul Leather. And the other person is Dr. Donnie Tran. He was a chief academic officer role in Boston, and then was an assistant superintendent in Fulton County, Georgia. And they both work with us in the Deeper Learning Dozen group that we're in with the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And Victor Prusak is leading us in this work. And this is going to be a co-constructed strategic plan that we develop with the community. And so what we're going to do is put forth a recovery plan, then do our strategic planning process, and then look at our recovery plan again and see where we need to make adjustments based on the strategic planning. And so that's, I know probably sounds pretty convoluted, and my time is up, Russ tells me. So I'm here to answer questions about those, but long story short, we do have an infusion of resources to be able, over the next 3 years, to be able to do some exciting work for the district. And the timeline was pretty short, so we're gonna incorporate that work into our strategic planning work over the course of the summer and fall, and think about those two things together. So the last piece is feedback on our lunches. Some of you are new to the lunch today. Many of you have been on our lunches before. And so Russ, do you want to pose the breakout question and give any sort of context?
Sure. So Victor Prusak, again, is on the call. He's our director of the Office of Engagement. This is sort of the brainchild of Tom, Victor, and I trying to figure out what are some ways we can have some regular engagement with the community. When we first started doing these, we thought we would do them for a couple of months and then probably want to move away from them. But we've had pretty good attendance, and we've kind of sort of continued them into May and have plans to continue them. But we do want to look at, is there a way that we can be doing this better? We know that they're not as equitable as we want them to be, and that's something that we're going to be talking about in the next few weeks, is how do we get our non-English first language speaking families to be more active, and how do we make this more accessible? And then we're wondering if this is really the best time to meet, especially now that K through 5 has gone back to school and for half days on Wednesdays. So if we were to move around the days and times for this meeting, what would you suggest? Or does this work well? If you don't want to answer that question, our other ask is, what is one thing that we can do to improve our time together? So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms of 4 for about 5 minutes. We're going to make it real quick, and then we can report out and jump right into our questions and answers. Thank you.
Russ, I'm staying out of a room. Do you want to?
I'm gonna hop in.
Do they look even-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll hop in with Polly and Kate.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
Hi, Russ.
You don't mind that if I join you?
Sure.
No, we were just catching up again. We were in the same group the last time I was at one of these, so.
I not intentional. It's all random, so it might never happen again, which is
That's right,
better
exactly.
for worse. So, all right. So this is really good because Kate, I think you've been to almost all of them, and Polly, you've been to a number of these as well. So we definitely would be interested in your feedback.
Yeah.
Is this format working? So I'll be quiet.
Great. I'll say it works for me. I was saying to Polly, I have 2 kids. One's a freshman at BHS, one's a senior, and they've been at BSD since kindergarten. And I know that the previous superintendent had like lunches and breakfasts sometimes, but I never made it to one of those. um, Sometimes it's just hard to do the first time anyway, even if it's a Zoom call. But I think, you know, accessibility, there's all kinds of questions for any kind of meeting you choose to have. There are accessibility issues, but I can only say this works well for me. I've appreciated this time. And I just put out a plug that I think if principals would be willing to do this, it would really, I think that would be great.
So is it, if I can just ask you to elaborate, is it like the time that works best for you? Or, because I know not all of our principals, but before the pandemic, a lot of them had like coffee in the morning.
Right. Yeah. Mr. Green used to do that. I did get to one or two of those. That was good.
Yeah. So are you looking for a different format? Are you looking for something virtual that people can drop into, or post the pandemic, you want to go back?
You know, I think, right. Virtual works well for me. It's easier than trying to get myself out the door to get somewhere. This happens to work with my schedule really well this time, but you know, to me, a consistent time when you know it can happen, you know, it works or it doesn't, but at least you get in a rhythm with it. So that helps.
Right. And we're doing this every 2 weeks or every month on this day, this time.
Yeah.
And set it from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Russ, I would reiterate what Kate just said about the importance of routine. I think it's one of the reasons it's been fairly well attended for you, because people know it's consistent. It's every Wednesday at 12. I also concur that I don't always say virtual meetings have an advantage, but for me it does, because there's no way I could leave work to go to a lunch with Tom with my schedule. But I have been able to make it this year, which has been great. I don't know if that'll be true next year because I'm a teacher and my schedule changes. I'm thinking about this question of equity. And I don't know that it's necessarily easy for other people to get on a computer at this time of day. And I'm thinking about like our new American community. If there's perhaps like a regular event, maybe not as frequent, but once a month, same date, same time, like at the Vermont African Center, where you could know like this is happening at this place, and they can get word out in the community and be there in person rather than asking of them to go online, and find out what that means for them. Is it like Saturday morning? Is it Sunday afternoon? I don't know if Tom would be willing to do that, but that's my like in the moment kind of idea about that.
One idea that I've kicked around, we haven't like really officially talked about, is like, do we do this? Do we move this lunch with Tom to once a month, and then that bi-weekly is this alternative event that you're talking about that maybe happens at a different time as well?
And around maybe the city, right? Different parts of the city that
Yep.
people could come to, possibly, I don't know.
Part of me is hesitant because I was with Yao when we tried to do those and they were just so poorly attended. And, but maybe I've gotten better about sort of publicizing the agenda, and then part of me does think like the virtual has been really good for getting people to come out. So
In the workday, it's been really helpful.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Right. I was thinking some other location as well where people could meet if they don't have their own internet access.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. It'd be great to hear if people are willing to report out. We may have lost a couple of participants, but go for it, Kate. Thank you.
Right. So I was with two other people, one who had to go to another meeting. So I'm been told I can speak on their behalf. We like virtual because we can do it from wherever we are and we don't have to have travel time involved. The timing works for the three of us who were there. We all acknowledge that we are fairly privileged people and have the ability to work around our schedules to make it happen. An improvement could be, and I took notes, so this wasn't me, so I want to make sure I get it. So Sina, tell me if I don't, because you were listening to improve. Updates are valuable, but there was a thought that it'd be nice to be able to hear from everybody on the screen in the very beginning, like a very quick thing, for example, a celebration and a challenge, so that we get to hear the voices of everyone, because even in a group like this, some people can dominate. So that was the suggestion so that we could hear from more people, but trying to keep it short because knowing that you don't want it to go on forever. And there was a suggestion of in trying to maybe attract different populations of people to invite either the MLLs and or like an elementary school teacher so that we know what's going on in elementary schools if we're not at that stage in life anymore, and perhaps special ed just to get more of a variety.
Anyone else? I'm not a teacher, so I don't really want to call on you with hands raised. You could just go ahead and talk.
Yeah, it's Claire. I was with Gail and Vicky from King Street, and we felt the same. So great, it's similar. Vicky, we asked Vicky how King Street does it and attracting families to engagement like this. I know King Street used to do lunch hours as well, and we too also said about the multilingual liaisons helping out and organizing. That when we did engagement around the pre-K, we did utilize their services, and it did help and attract those voices to the table. So thank you.
Can I go back and give Vicky a recognition, because I want to thank her for being on the original re-envisioning committee and helping out all that time ago. So thank you.
Great. Okay, Tom, I think we can open it up for questions and answers. There's a couple in the chat. And then if people want to continue to comment about Lunch with Tom, we can, but I imagine there's some BHS lingering questions out there. So let's take it away.
All right. Well, thank you for that feedback. I love the idea of the conversation, like getting voices in up front. I think that's, we do that at all of our meetings too. So it does feel odd to sort of jump into me blabbing on. So I love that idea and the others. So thank you for that, for thinking about that and giving us that feedback. We will definitely incorporate it into our work moving forward. One quick question about in-person versus virtual. How, as we head into next year, is there a value in being in person, or do you feel like virtual is a good way to continue this?
I speak up and say that I appreciate virtual. I know previous superintendents had breakfasts and stuff, and I never made it to any of those. Okay. So this is easier to pop in and out, I think. But I think that it could be done. I think as we move forward, maybe it can be done as both. I was thinking about, using the resources at the library to maybe have a meeting and then maybe make it available for people to jump in on Zoom too, because they have a lot of tech support and experience with that. And I'd love to see the district really engage with the library. I think they're at a great, I know we're working on it, but I think Fletcher Free is at a great point for that collaboration.
Oh, great. I love that idea. Could do a combo. Thank you.
Tom, Kate and I were actually in the same group, but I want to reiterate virtual works really well for, I think, the people obviously who are coming, but then for equity purposes, I worry about people who might not feel comfortable accessing a virtual meeting or might not have the computer to do that. So I love the idea of the multilingual liaisons getting involved, or even just like word goes out into, say, the New American community, like gather at this time to watch the recording of this, or gather at this time around the computer until people get more comfortable with it. I'm not totally clear on people's comfort level and their workday. So I think that's a good question to explore, how to maybe even bring them into a school setting or something if you're going to keep doing this.
Great. Thanks. Okay, good. All right, so that's really helpful. All right, so what are some of your
couple of questions right at the beginning, Tom. One is maybe for me hard to answer, so but I think it's important to acknowledge that if it is hard to answer. So Kate Stein asked about goal 5. Does the completion of AP mean finishing the course, or finishing the course and taking the exam?
So the metric is actually, it's a little bit of both. It's a good question because I'm sort of looking at the language now. The metric is around the percent of students who take those courses. And so for me, that is simply enrollment in those courses is the initial metric. But I don't think, but the goal isn't just that we have that the AP course, that there's more access to our AP courses. The goal should be, completion of the course. And then I think there's debate. Is there completion of the course, and is there passing, is it passing the test? And is it a 3 or a 4? Is it, I think there could be lots of debate around that question. The original idea for this goal was to start really looking at what is the access, right? What percent of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, who have IEPs, who identify as students of color, how many of those folks those kids are in those classes?
Thank you. I'd like to dig into that one. I know I had asked other questions about goal 5 at the previous meeting, just if we can have comparisons from years prior, especially knowing that last year at the end of the year for AP stuff was weird, and this year it's not normal either.
Right. Yeah.
I'll break that down as a reminder for us, and then I would also encourage you to check out the equity report.
Yeah, the equity report speaks to it. We also we've been looking at this as a leadership team too, and it's a good question. What are the trends over time? We do have the past couple of years, and those numbers, what it shows us is that the percent of students, the students are not reflected. Our student body is not reflected in our AP classes now or last year, I think, or the year before. And the high school team has been, Lauren has been a part of those kind of initial conversations. Kate, and I know that you all are starting to talk about that too, or have been talking about it. And so I think there's some work there. And then I think we'll see if this same goal shows up in our strategic plan and sort of where the community is on this goal. But it does seem clear that it is clear that there is work to do around access to higher level content for our students of color and our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. All right. Russ, do you want to read off a couple of questions, or should we just ask?
Let's start from the beginning. I think this is an important one that we've been asked a little bit as we go through this planning processes. Do you have any information about the dismantling of the current buildings on Institute Road?
Yeah, what we know is we have to demolish those buildings and do so in a way that is safe for the environment and meets all of the rules around how you demolish buildings that have contaminants. So there is a cost to the demolition of the building that we need to factor into the overall project for the high school. I think we don't know yet exactly what that will look like. I think there are a couple of different ways to look at it, or there will be a couple of different ways to look at it. I also think that this could be a place where there may be federal and state funding for cleanup of sites that have toxic materials in a way that it may be easier for us to get funding there than it would be like state and federal kind of relief funding for that type of work than it would be for building a high school. But we'll be looking for funding on both sides of the coin. But this is definitely something that we have to deal with.
Any word on vaccine clinics at our schools? We got that word yesterday.
Yeah, what we learned was that we will not have vaccine clinics at our schools, but it looks like the vaccine clinics will be in similar locations to the adult vaccine clinics. What we've found, we volunteered in both cases, and in both cases they said we're really focusing the vaccination clinics in places where, in schools, in places where those are the big spaces in the community and can provide access for the community. And in Burlington, there are other big spaces that we can use, so we'll use those spaces. And so I think that has worked for adults. I did have to drive to Champlain Valley to get mine, but hey, it was worth it. But we want to make sure there's access to these vaccinations and that people know that that it's important to be vaccinated for overall public health. And so that's something that we'll continue to message and will be a part of our work to make sure that we're providing as much access and information as possible. Yeah. And I'm excited. I think it'll really help, you know, having 12 to 15-year-olds in that group will really help. We've actually been in a really good place. We have had a couple of cases in the past 2 weeks, but very few, and numbers are down in the region and in the city and in our schools, which is great for particularly because we're back in person more. We're back 5 days a week or 4.5 days, but we're in school 5 days a week in elementary school and 4 days a week in middle school, which I know there was a lot of kind of fear around that and stress around that, but it's turned out to have gone really pretty smoothly. And I met with my student advisory, Victor, and I met with our student advisory group yesterday. And one of our middle school students said she was just so happy to be back 4 days a week. I just hear that sort of everywhere I turn, which is great to hear. Even though there are a couple students, not a couple, there's a small handful of students and families out there for whom remote learning they feel has really worked. And so we really have to think about that. And it was helpful in that meeting to hear from students about kind of what worked, right? The self-pacing, the ability to have a snack while you're learning, simple things make a difference.
Well, speaking of middle schoolers, what is the timeline for the EMS principal search?
As soon as possible. We do have interest from there is significant interest out there. So we have a number of viable and strong candidates. We have some candidates who were in different parts of the high school search who continue to be interested. And we have, I believe we have some internal people who are also interested. So I think we're in a good place for that search. It is one of my goals long-term for us to really build leadership capacity within our district so that it doesn't feel like a scramble when we need to find a school leader. And I think there's a lot of work for us to do there. I actually met with a group yesterday called New Leaders who develop they used to be a principal residency program, and now they do some bigger work around leadership development and some principal residency work still too. But I really want us to think about building sustainable leadership development programming from teacher to assistant principal, deans of students to principal. But I feel good about the EMS principal search. Yeah.
Great. And if anybody wants to help, communication office will be putting it all over social media today, probably next week. So please share, send it to people. I think we have a couple more questions about Burlington High School. Jen, would you like to share your questions about toxicity, which could be actually about anything now that I say that out loud, but I thought maybe it was related to BHS, but whatever you want to share.
Thank you. It was related to BHS, but also more broadly related, I guess, to all the money that was mentioned at the beginning of this lunch that I guess will be coming in over the next several years, and just hoping that maybe there could be a conversation about really creative ways to use that money and to build a new high school that could set a good example for our youth of how to build without toxic anything, because it can be done, and it has been done up until I guess industrial times, right? Like people always used to make structures out of things that wouldn't kill us unless they collapse on us. So yeah, that would be so cool if our kids could go to school in like a really beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, clean, like wood and mud structure or a biodome, and like grow their own herbs or something like that. Or even if this could be just a great learning opportunity for our kids, like if they could go and watch the cleanup, put on their masks and protective gear and go and see how, like, what a mess we've made. Not us personally, but you know, there was a really dark age in history when we were using really terrible building materials, and unfortunately we haven't stopped completely with that. I think we've gotten better, so it could be a super good learning opportunity for the kids. I had that thought. The toxicity, and then I did want to ask more about like what would be the process for figuring out how all that recovery planning money would be spent, and if there could be even like possibilities for the kids to design their own curriculum more with more financial support. I know that's kind of been a big one for me as I talk with my son. I know we're not supposed to get too personal here, but just thinking that like a lot of times he's had really great ideas for projects he wants to do, and then it turns out the project is designed by the teacher, and they have like a short list of things to choose from, and like his time in school is short, and I really want him to get to choose his own courses of study. So yeah, like maybe, I don't know, my ideal for him would be to be doing some heavy physical labor half the time and then learning like Chinese and artificial intelligence programming the other half of the time, preparing for that inevitable future. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I don't know. You spoke to me on multiple levels there. I've been spending a lot of time gardening in the, where obviously we moved here in July, we have a new house. And so I've been dying for a greenhouse myself. So I love the biodome. That's next level thinking, but definitely we want to make sure that we have an environmentally sound and responsible building, and that'll be a key part of the work that we do. And we want to think about how we're bringing the outside world and the world that we're preparing students for into the structure and into the design and build of the structure. So that really spoke to me, and I appreciate your feedback. And the second is student voice. So we're a part of this group called the Deeper Learning Dozen, where we've been spending a lot of time thinking about student voice and how we bring students into decision-making and center them in the decision-making, as opposed to getting their feedback after a decision has been made to have them tell us whether it was horrible or okay, to bring them in the beginning. It is sort of opposite to the way that schools were designed, right? Our schools were designed for an industrial era of sort of giving children information to go, work in factories and sort of be kind of robotic. And we have a lot of room to do to shift that. But I do think that you're right, that giving student voice, giving space for student voice and student agency in the development of everything we do is something that we need to commit to. And so from curriculum to designing buildings, to being on hiring committees, to being on school boards, to all those types of opportunities, I think are really ones that we need to take seriously and not just do as kind of lip service. So keep on us on that. And in terms of recovery funding, we do have student representative on the recovery team. But as I said, I just feel like this is one of those ones where we're moving so fast. It is moving so fast. The timeline is so short that we really have to think about the recovery planning as it relates to strategic planning, right? And I think we also need to put the dollars into perspective, because the American Rescue Plan allocates $123 billion to schools across the country. The state gets a portion of that and then gives it out to schools. For us, it ends up being about $6 million a year, which is really significant. And in a $95 million budget, it's not a huge amount of money. And so one of the things we have to be really careful of with the recovery planning is that we don't put ourselves in a fiscal cliff where you spend money on people and then you can't afford the people after 3 years. So investing in facilities, investing in development of curriculum and the implementation of curriculum. Our school board is really interested, as we are as a district, in place-based learning and deeper learning and bringing teacher and student responsibility and development into that work. And so that's work that we're really deeply committed to. And I think that, we have to think out long term. We have to think about how these funds will support our strategic plan. Because the other big risk with recovery planning is that it becomes deficit mindseted, right? Which is the big pushback that's happening in the education world right now, where everyone is saying, please don't call this, learning loss. Please don't call it recovery. Let's think about other ways to describe this, because words matter, right? And kids soak up, and adults and communities soak up what we say about them. And so we have to be really conscious of thinking about the assets of our community and how we build off of those. And we've got really great strengths here in Burlington. And I've been in a couple. I've been in Providence and DC. And so I've been in a couple of places before where I don't see the same strengths. I haven't seen the same strengths around engagement, around commitment to diversity and inclusion, around commitment to this work that is really community-wide. And so I feel like we do have a big opportunity here. And I see that opportunity in the recovery plan and funds, but more as it relates to strategic planning long-term.
We have a couple more questions, I think, about the high school. Polly had some questions, and there's a question about how to make the most out of Macy's.
Okay.
Hi, thanks. So on behalf of a constituent who could not be here today, who also teaches with me at South Burlington High School, he is wondering how he wants to volunteer to get involved in grassroots efforts to get people really excited about the new BHS BTC. And he's wondering how and when to do that. So kind of what's the plan, but not like a defensive mode. What's the plan? More like, I want to get going on this and I want to help, and I want to help people get really excited about it and understand the implications financially so that they'll support it. So any ideas? Or Victor, Russ, maybe just put that in your list or something. I don't know if you could answer it now.
I would start by saying that we really need the support and the engagement of our community if we're going to do this well. And I think we have it, right? But we also need to be really intentional about continuing to nurture, right, that engagement. And so I think the first thing is to make sure that we're on the district side, that we're communicating clearly where we are in the process, and that we are creating spaces for feedback and for conversation. So we did get some outreach from City Council to start having this conversation with them. So one of the things that Russ and I have been really conscious about is making sure that this is not a quiet decision or a quiet conversation, that it's really public. So we've been on 15 different news events and news outlets, and we want to sort of take advantage of every opportunity to talk about it, and so that people know that it's happening and can engage when we start doing that work. At this point, we have had some outreach, and I have said, we're really getting our feet under us around the site assessment, and that's really the first step. And I want to be a little bit careful that I don't sort of unintentionally give folks a charge to go out and do some major advocacy without us working together to make sure we're clear on what that is. So for right now, it's sort of let's ask the right questions. Let's get prepared. And then I think there's going to be big work and engagement primarily around getting support and funding to make this project happen. So that's where my thinking is. I don't know, Russ and Victor, if you have additional thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think the other piece, and it's actually Kate mentioned it in the lead into her question, which is the opportunity to build a new high school is very exciting, right? And so it's that enthusiasm, and I don't even, people are using like, make lemons out of lemonade. I don't look at it that way. Like, this is such an incredible opportunity for us to have a 21st century new high school building, which is really where we were 6 years ago in the conversation, is incredible. And considering options that are both downtown and not downtown. So I think it's how much that we focus on that opportunity. And as Tom said, like he even said, he's being told 3 years to build a new building, and he's saying 2 years. Like there's an urgency and such an opportunity right now. So how do we garner and run with that excitement and get folks engaged so that we have support in the input processes on the way, support in the funding process as well?
Yeah, and I think for me, it goes back to we want to answer questions about this. And even if we don't have the answers, I've seen some emails from Tom last couple of weeks that said, I know this isn't the answer you want, but we're working on it and this is what we're passionate about. So for me, when you see information about the high school online, on the media, on social media, share it with your friends. Make sure that they know that we have been trying to talk about this for a few months now, and that this process is coming and it's going to be quick. So just help us keep your people informed, and then feel free to reach out to me if you think of engagement opportunities. We want to be out there. Tom was at an NPA last week. So we're going to be at City Council, as he said. So we really want this story out. So we have 1 minute left, Tom.
Okay.
And then we had, I know we're going to be at Macy's for the next 3 to 4 years. What are the plans for that location? I know it has some deficits, but how do we make the most out of it? So I know there's some stuff going on this summer that you might want to talk about and talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is there are two big things. The first big thing is making sure that we have a noise consultant or a sound consultant, I guess I should say, who's walked the building with us to sort of understand where the pain points are around the noise. There are a couple of rooms. There's sort of a general hum in the building. I've spent a significant amount of time in the building. And then there are some classrooms that are fine. And there are some other classrooms that we need to have some solutions for. And there are a couple of different solutions. There's like some padding you can put on walls. And then there are also some screens that you can put on from ceiling to the bottom of wall. And so there are a couple of different sound mitigation strategies that we're gonna use. And then the other thing is really connecting with getting students out, right? You're in a building, there are no windows in the building. And that is a reality of the space. And so we have to figure out how students have the opportunity to get outside. And so we've done some of that. Students are, you'll often see students kind of coming out in the front for a break with their teacher, and then we have started to use the top of the parking structure. So there's some outdoor space out there that we've been able to work with the parking folks to utilize. And we've also started to build partnerships, sort of the deeper work, right, around partnerships with organizations that are close by. Victor has really helped us. I think it's you, Victor, who's helped us build partnership in a number of different areas. One of the exciting ones is with Echo. And so Echo has really opened the space to us in ways that are very generous and very, very kind of supportive. And so that's a space that we can use, and there are others in the community. So we really have to get intentional about how we're designing our curriculum and how our curriculum aligns to community resources and gets us out into the community. But lots more work there, and there's a lot of good thinking among the leadership there too.
So it is 1:02. I think we should let people get to work, but I dropped my email in there. If anybody has questions, concerns, comments, you can reach out to me. And I'll also drop Superintendent Flanagan's email in there. He's more important than I am, so he's the one you will probably want to talk to. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great day.
Good to see you all. Thank you.